We worked with the group from Chile during the mornings. We missed all the morning sessions in the tent, but we were in another tent with the kids and with the group from Chile for the Vacation Bible School. And so it was great. The winning team for the competition that was going throughout the week was Team Toilet Paper. We're just all a bunch of minions at heart, aren't we? Yeah, Sheila has very big shoes for us to fill. Please come back, Sheila. She does a lot of work. And if you want to find out how much, just help out with the kids. Help out with Fireflies. Actually, you all will be helping out with Fireflies with this new format with care groups. But she does so much. So thank you for what you do, Sheila. We were trying to kind of fill her shoes during the week, and we did have a lot of fun. But really, we're the youth pastors here at the church. And the message that just the things that I wanted to speak about today came from a time when I was asking the Lord for wisdom several months ago. And I just realized that it feels like I'm always asking him for wisdom sometimes. And it's just this elusive thing that I can't quite grasp. And I'm thinking, why am I always asking you for wisdom? When I read the scriptures, we're going to go to James here. It seems very easy to get wisdom. Let's go to James, actually, in James 1. A lot of you know these verses that I'm going to share. They're very familiar verses. James says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. I don't know if I'm the only one, but sometimes I'm bothered by James and how he writes through the book. I want to make my experience be the standard. You know, I haven't always seen what he's writing here, and so that must be the standard. So I want to try to make these words fit my experience rather than try to lift my experience to fit the words on the page here and the writing that he has. So he does the same thing with healing. He does it with wisdom. He's here. He says, if anyone lacks it, here's the formula. You ask God, and he'll give it to you. Now, there is a catch, he says, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should expect not to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. And so I know that too. I know this passage very well, and there's times where I feel like I'm not double-minded. I'm sincerely asking, I'm believing, and yet it still seems like wisdom is this elusive thing sometimes that I can't quite grasp. And I think I'm not the only one. If you think about it, if it really is this simple, why aren't we just the wisest people here? In everywhere that we go, we should be the wisest people. We should be known for people who are just deeply, deeply wise, because it's so simple, it's so easy. And yet I don't think that's the case. At least it's not always the case in my own life. And so I began to look more into why does it seem so opposite from what I read here, where I'm struggling to figure out this whole thing of wisdom. I'm struggling to grasp wisdom in certain areas of my life. Then I found Proverbs. Proverbs makes it sound even worse, actually. Worse as in easier. In Proverbs, it's almost as if wisdom is chasing us down, trying to catch us. It's like it gets even easier, which doesn't help my argument at all that it's actually kind of hard sometimes. And so I came to Proverbs 9, and the writer in Proverbs does this thing where he personifies wisdom. Wisdom actually becomes a woman, kind of like your boat or your vehicle. We personify these certain objects or these concepts into people. And so wisdom is a woman in his writing right here in Proverbs 9. Wisdom has built her house. This is in verse 1. So I'm reading this after I'm wrestling with James and trying to figure out, it doesn't seem that easy actually. And then I come across this verse in Proverbs, these verses. Wisdom has built her house. She has set up its 7 pillars. She has prepared her meat and mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her servants, and she calls from the highest point of the city. So she's very visible, and she's very ready for us. She says, let all who are simple come to my house. To those who have no sense, she says, come, eat my food and drink the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways, and you will live. Walk in the way of insight. So we see this incredibly simple invite to all of us who are simple, all of us who are seeking wisdom, to where she's extremely visible. She's at the highest point of the city. She's got her table set, and she's inviting us to come. Come, I have wisdom for you. And you see it all throughout the book of Proverbs, where wisdom is so plentiful to each one of us. We just have to accept the invitation. And so I'm reading this and I'm thinking, this is too easy. This is not how I've experienced it in my life. Why is it that I sometimes miss wisdom? Why is it that we aren't the wisest people in our town? And some of you might be, but I often feel like I'm not even close. I kept reading in Proverbs. Sometimes that's just all you have to do is keep reading because the story's not finished. If you keep reading in Proverbs, you find out there's another woman. There's another woman, and her name is Folly. Folly is an unruly woman, it says in my translation. We can see that in the same chapter, and it sets up the exact same. Let's keep reading. Here's where it changes. This is what Folly says. After she says, let all who are simple come to my house. She says, to those who have no sense, she says, stolen water is sweet. Food eaten in secret is delicious. But little do they know that the dead are there, that her guests are deep in the realm of the dead. And so that's where everything changes right there. The invitation is exactly the same. Just imagine you're on a hike, you're walking along, you get to the top of the hill, and you see two people calling out to you. Here's two women. And they're both giving you the exact same invitation. They're both extremely visible. They're both right there ready for you. And they both say, let all who are simple come to my house. But then there's a change right after that first invitation. And here's the change, is those two things. Wisdom says, leave your simple ways and you will live. Walk in the way of insight. Folly says, stolen water is sweet. Food eaten in secret is delicious. When I began to think about that and just roll it through my own head and be like, what are they saying? How would I put that in my own words? Here's my words, all right? This is just me coming up with my own interpretation. Wisdom says, stop doing what you're doing or living the way that you're living. That's where you see the word leave. Leave your simple ways. Stop doing that and walk on a different path. You see that, walk in the way of insight. And so it requires an action from us to stop, to leave the way that we're living or the choices that we're making or the way that we're thinking and jump on a different path. Folly doesn't ask that of you. Folly, in my words, says, nobody has to know how you're living. You're doing fine. You're doing great. You can keep living the way that you're living as long as nobody finds out. You'll be fine. And so imagine if you're, again, up on that hill and you're walking along and you hear those two invitations, and the one is requiring you to step up and to actually stop and make that hard choice of doing something different and walking on a different path. And the other one isn't. The other one's saying, you're okay. You're okay. Nobody has to know. Just come on over here. You can keep living the way that you're living. You'll be fine. Honestly, I'm going to choose folly quite a bit. It seems so much easier. It sounds the same. It looks the same. It just seems easier. And so I find myself going over to, which side was folly? Over here? Going over to folly and missing out on wisdom completely. And so when I saw those two, I just began to suddenly see wisdom actually everywhere because it requires a response from us. Let me give you an example. Penn preached several months ago he talked about the Sabbath, and he shared his own experience with discovering the importance and the power of implementing the Sabbath in his life, implementing a day of rest, a day of doing something different, of not, in the daily grind and work. And he shared this story of how the Lord walked him through this whole process of he was experiencing burnout, and he felt like at one point that he just needed to go to bed. And this was in the middle of the day, middle of the week, and he went to bed. And through that whole process, in the weeks ahead, the Lord, I hope I'm summarizing this correctly, the Lord took him down a path of learning what it looks like to build that Sabbath day in your life. And I was here. I was sitting in one of these benches right here listening to that, and I heard wisdom when I heard that. I heard an invitation. I heard wisdom calling out to me that this is wise. This is something that you need to do. This is something that you need to implement in your life. And I know that many of you did too, because I heard several of you talk about it afterwards, and you said, that's something that I want to do. I need to start implementing this in my life. I need to actually get this built more deeply into my life, is taking that Sabbath rest, because life just goes and goes and goes, and you feel like you can't stop sometimes. And this is a gift from the Lord, and it really is an incredible gift. It's kind of like, imagine if I just had $200 and I decided to give it to Penn and Heather every week. And I said, here's $200. This is a gift from me to you. There's only one catch. I'd like you to spend that $200 on a date night every single week. It's a gift from me to you. Use it for a date night. You could do a lot of things with that. You could go to all the restaurants here, drinks, appetizers, a really good tip. You could do quite a bit with $200 every week if you wanted to have a nice date night. And let's just say that they accepted that gift. It's a gift from me to them. Only thing is I'd really like them to use it for a date night. And so that everything's going great until there comes that week where, it's just been a very full week. Don't really feel like going out on a date. Still get the $200. And they decide to spend the $200 on the utility bill or something like that, the mortgage. And okay, the Sabbath. And suddenly we find ourselves having appointments on the day that we were going to have our Sabbath, whether it's today or any other day. And then we begin to say, well, that's okay. Well, maybe next week and next week and next week. And we begin to kind of pull away from what we heard was wisdom and slip more into the side over here. And we begin to say, someone's got to pay the bills. Someone's got to do the work. Someone's got to take care, of my family or whatever else, my business. And so you begin to pull further and further away from the wisdom that you first heard because it requires an action. It requires a level of personal responsibility, or it requires you leaving your simple ways and walking on a different path. And so I heard wisdom when Penn spoke on that, and I realized that I can hear it. It's right there. I can grasp it, but it requires me leaving. It requires me making that choice. And it's just a whole lot easier to go to the other woman, if you want to call it that, and the one who doesn't require that, the one who says, you're okay, you're doing great, nobody has to know, you'll be fine. And so I pull away from wisdom again and again. I began to see this everywhere in my life. I began to see, I know what to do. I realized that actually wisdom is everywhere. Wisdom is extremely plentiful. The Lord wants us to have wisdom. He makes it very simple for us to hear wisdom. And I know, it's like I see wisdom in Him telling me how to treat my wife, how to treat my family, how to treat my friends. He gives me wisdom on how to operate in my business. He tells me wisdom on how to take care of myself. But all of it requires me leaving the path that I'm on and going on a different path. And that's the hard part. It's kind of like, in the evening after, let's just say you've had a long day, you feel good, great day, and you're kind of winding down, getting ready for bed, and you say, tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to move, I'm going to lift some weights, I'm going to work out. That's wisdom. You're hearing wisdom. You should take care of yourself. Sure, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. And so you've just heard wisdom. You've experienced it. But then what happens at 5 o'clock in the morning? The alarm rings, and you realize that, to act on this wisdom, I have to leave my simple warm bed. And I have to walk in the path towards the gym. And that requires work. And suddenly we say, maybe I'll just stay over here. I'll do it tomorrow. And we know. I just began to realize that wisdom is there. Wisdom is so plentiful. The Lord speaks to me. He gives me insight. He gives me instruction. But it's on me to actually make that decision of stepping onto a different path, leaving the path that I'm on right now and choosing a different path. And it's just a whole lot easier to be over here and to listen to the other voice that says, I don't have to do that. And so I realized that I knew exactly what wisdom was, but I'm missing it because it requires an action on my part. And so, again, as I began to realize that, I began to see it everywhere and realize that, this requires an action. This requires a response. Wisdom is falling into my lap. The Lord really wants us to have it, but it requires something from me that either I'm too lazy to give, or I don't feel like I don't want to, or a lot of different reasons. So I'm beginning to see it differently. Ultimately, God wants us to have wisdom. We hear about Solomon. We call him the wisest king, or he's one of the wisest people that have walked on this earth. And oftentimes when I'm trying to differentiate the difference between wisdom and between folly over here, I think of this story in Solomon. Because one thing I've noticed, they can often look very much the same, like we read in Proverbs. They're both on the hill. They're both saying the same thing. Wisdom and folly can look identical. But folly doesn't care about anyone else but you. Wisdom is bigger than you. Wisdom cares about your friends, your family, your community, your employees. Wisdom is so much bigger than just you and your own problems. And I see that in the story of King Solomon, where Solomon, I'm just going to tell it. We all know the story. He has a dream. The Lord appears to him in a dream. And he says, whatever you want, you can have it. And you imagine that? You're in it, you have a dream, it's a very vivid, real dream. The Lord appears to you and he says, whatever you want, you can have it. I'll give it to you. And what do you say? What do you ask for? And he didn't ask for a long life. He didn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for safety from his enemies. He didn't even actually ask for wisdom. And I remember hearing that story, and I always thought that Solomon asked for wisdom. But it wasn't exactly wisdom. When you read about what he asked for, some of the translations say it different, but the most common translation you'll hear is he asked for an understanding heart. He wanted to know his people. Some of us might call that actually empathy. He wanted to know where his people came from. He wanted to know how they think. He wanted to know them deeply from the inside, which is actually exactly what we want as people. We want to be known. We want someone to hear us. We want someone to understand us. So you can imagine when Solomon received that from the Lord, that level of an understanding heart, of a discerning mind, to where he could understand you as people or us as people. Imagine the people, they come to their king, they feel heard, they feel understood, and his kingdom just completely flourishes. And then through that, the Lord, he becomes the wisest king on the earth. But it all starts with his attitude towards other people. It's so much bigger than just himself. It's his whole kingdom that he's leading. He asks for that understanding heart. The Lord gives it to him, and through that, he becomes the wisest king to walk this earth. And that's what I want. And it's always, wisdom is so much more than just myself. Wisdom is so much bigger than my own problems. But it's all of us together. And so I think of that story sometimes because I know folly doesn't care about other people. Wisdom wants the good of you, yes, but also of the people that you're doing life with, your community, your family. And so in that moment when I can't tell the difference between wisdom and folly, I come back to this story again and I say, which one is bigger than just me? And which one requires an action? Which one requires me to leave what I'm doing and to walk on a different path? And when I begin to implement that into my life, when I begin to ask myself questions that way, again, I begin to see wisdom everywhere. And I think all of you will too. It's just interesting when you read through Proverbs how similar wisdom and folly look at the first glance. Folly is so much easier. It's so much quicker. It doesn't require that sacrifice. It doesn't require that discernment. And so many of us end up over here. But when we take a step back and we look, I realize that, first of all, wisdom is everywhere. It just requires a different level of an action from me. And so as I begin to read this, I read it completely different now. And I want to just wade deep into wisdom. I want the Lord to speak to me. I want to be wise, and I think all of you do too. It's very plentiful. Just read through Proverbs. Wisdom is everywhere. We just have to act on it. That's my message for today. Let's stand up. I'd like to end with a prayer, just a blessing over this group. I think James is exactly right, actually. All we have to do is ask. And if we're not doubting, if we're fully believing, the Lord will give us wisdom. It's very, very simple. He will give you wisdom. But it's going to require an action on your step to actually step into that, to actually receive it. So let's ask in your guidance. And God, I'll say it right now, if it requires an action on my part, on our part, I know this is a whole lot easier said than done. But we want to act on that. If it requires us leaving the way that we're living right now, or leaving whatever we're doing right now and stepping onto a different path, Lord, we want to do that. We want to do that and show us what that looks like. God, show us on a daily basis the difference between wisdom and folly and how to discern between the two. We ask for wisdom, Lord. Please give it to each one of us, liberally, plentifully, every single day. Thank you so much for leading us. Thank you so much for the past week that we've had and all the different words and miracles and different things that happened over camp meetings, Lord. We're so grateful for it. Thank you for every single person here that came here on this Sunday morning. We ask for rest today.